When Volkswagen launched the facelifted Passat R-Line, people lamented that it had lost quite a bit of power. Well, it's 2022. Volkswagen has updated the Passat R-Line again, and now there is more power, more torque, more kit, all for a little bit more money. And since all of you have very eagerly requested this review, here it is. This is our review of the 2022 Volkswagen Passat R-Line. Now, with this 2022 model year update, the changes are very minimal. The face is exactly the same as before, with the same IQ full LED headlights with scrolling indicators, LED fog lights, but you now get the new 2D Volkswagen badge up on the nose. On the side, you still get 19-inch silver alloy wheels wrapped in Pirelli Cinturato tires in 235/40 R19 sizes. You still get a R-Line badge here, which looks very smart. You get nice chrome finishing around the windows and this very beautiful gentle taper to the rear. Of course, if you want a more gentle taper, please refer to our review of the Volkswagen Arteon. At the back, again, you still get the same full LED IQ lights with the animated brake lights as well as the scrolling indicators, but again, you now get the new 2D badge at the rear, making this look like the all-new Passat in line with Volkswagen's new corporate identity. What also hasn't changed, of course, is the boot space, where you still get plenty of room for all your luggage for 4 passengers or 5 in a pinch, which means that balik kampung for Raya should not be an issue at all. You also get a full-size spare wheel in the boot, which is especially useful in a car like this, just in case you go touring and you encounter a flat, heaven forbid. You also get an electric tailgate because this is a relatively premium saloon and that is a premium offering that you'd expect in a car like this. Now, again, like I said, the changes to this car are minimal, mostly focused on the powertrain, but those aren't the only changes, so we'll talk about the rest of them inside. Now, inside the updated Passat R-Line, like I said, the changes remain very minimal. You still get the same leather upholstery with this carbon fiber-esque sort of pattern here, as well as R-Line stitching on the back of the seats. These 2 front seats are still electrically adjustable with lumbar support and memory, but you now get a touch-sensitive display for the HVAC controls, which it looks good, but the operation of which is not so great. Mercifully, however, you still get the same button-laden steering wheel as before, and all the buttons are so tactile and lovely to press and so easy to find when you're driving, which is what you want from buttons on the steering wheel rather than capacitive touch buttons, which are very irritating to use, Volkswagen. You also get the new 2D badge in the middle of the steering wheel, and that basically rounds up the aesthetic changes in here. The one spec change inside is the inclusion of a 12-speaker 700-watt Harman Kardon audio system, which is lifted from the Volkswagen Arteon. And I have to say that this audio system sounds fantastic. It's got all the bass you want, it's got a beautiful surround sound system, and you have 4 presets to choose from, allowing you to tune the audio system to exactly the way you want it. Now, as I said, everything in here remains de rigueur with the Passat, which means your driving position is excellent. You have extendable lower thigh support. You have a fantastic view all the way around with great visibility, especially out of these tiny little quarter lights just on the side of the wing mirrors, although your rearward visibility is slightly hampered by slightly thicker C-pillars, though that is of course aided by the reverse camera that you get with this car as standard. In terms of infotainment system, you get a 9-inch infotainment system here with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. All the USB ports in here use USB-Cs, whether you like it or not. You also get a 12.3-inch instrument cluster display up ahead of you, which is relatively customizable, but though it's not quite as customizable as what you get from, say, a premium Mark. But then again, given the price point, one shouldn't really complain. You also get a drive mode selector, which of course allows you to manipulate the dynamic chassis control this car comes with, along with the XDS front differential, which only the R-Line gets. And you also have another button here for the start-stop, the parking sensors, as well as the rear sun blind. Now, talking about the rear, we have to talk about climate control. So naturally, at the front, you get one zone for the passenger, one zone for the driver, but you also get one zone for the rear with a couple of vents set in the middle. You also get sun blinds on the left and right in order to shade passengers at the rear, or more importantly, young children that might be sat in there in ISOFIX mounted seats. Now, like I said, this is a lot of what we've seen before, but the big change, the enormous change, comes from the engine room up ahead. While it's the same 2-litre engine from before, it now produces 220 PS and 350 Newton meters of torque. That is up from the 190 PS and 320 Newton meters of torque that you got from the pre-update version of this car. Power goes to the front wheels via a 6-speed wet clutch DCT instead of the 7-speed DCT that you got before. Whether you think that's an advantage or a drawback remains to be seen, but what I can say is that it does respond rather well. Although I'm starting to touch on the way this car drives, so maybe we ought to get it out on the road to talk a little bit more about that. Now, driving the updated Volkswagen Passat. Now, like I said, the big change with this car is the powertrain. So you now get more power and more torque than before. You do sacrifice one gear though, which I think is a very strange omission. But in any case, this is basically the same powertrain that you get in the Volkswagen Arteon, as well as the Volkswagen Tiguan All-Space R-Line, albeit without the 4-motion system, and again with a 6-speed wet clutch DCT. Now, in terms of the overall performance, naturally this car feels a lot sprightlier than before. 0 to 100 times were not provided by Volkswagen, but in terms of the way it drives, you can definitely tell that there's a lot more potential from this powertrain. From the moment you hit the throttle, you can tell this car is a lot more eager than before. Even though the R-Line, I suspect, is a slightly different throttle mapping compared to the Elegance, when it only had 190 PS to share, this 220 PS model feels just a lot more energetic, and I feel that it's a lot more befitting what you'd expect from a Volkswagen Passat. On top of that, because this car comes with the XDS front differential as well as the dynamic chassis control, allowing you to dial in just how stiffly sprung you want your Passat to be, as well as the XDS, which of course shuffles power between the two front wheels depending on which one has the most amount of grip, it does mean that this car can be a proper giggle on a B road. And perhaps more importantly to buyers, it is also incredibly potent out on the motorway. Going from, say, 60 kilometers an hour on a filter lane into the highway and getting it up to 110 is done so quickly and so seamlessly. However, when you do arrive at 110, you will soon realize that this car suffers from quite a bit of road raw. I'm not sure if that's down to the Pirelli Cinturato tires or if this car needs a little bit more sound insulation in the wheel arches, but it must be said that there is quite a bit of road intrusion into the cabin. Wind noise is decently well suppressed, although there is a little bit of a whistle that comes from the wing mirrors both on the left and right once you pass the national highway speed. But you know, I think it's the road raw that really stays with me. Now, when you compare this to some of its other competitors like the Toyota Camry, which we sampled on the media drive, which was incredibly well insulated and decently powerful, only about 18 PS short of this if I recall correctly, it does feel like the Passat is not as refined as it might be able to be. It could be because of the way VPCM has spec'd this car, or maybe it's just the way these tires react with road surfaces here. But it must be said that I feel like this car could be a little bit quieter. It also doesn't help the Passat's case that the Camry also comes with a much more commodious rear end with electrically adjustable rear seats, which obviously this car does not have. Of course, the reclining seats in the Camry comes at the cost of folding rear seats, but when you have a boot this big, how often will you be folding them anyway? Then, of course, comes the matter of safety. Now, the Passat R-Line does better than the rest of the VW range in the sense that it does come with blind spot monitoring, which is not something that all VWs come with, although they really should. But unfortunately, it only has blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. That's it. It does not come with autonomous emergency braking or adaptive cruise control or lane keep assist, which is a system that was recently added to the Volkswagen Tiguan. And it makes me wonder why it is that VPCM chooses to spec these cars the way they do. When you compare it to vehicles like the Honda Accord, which comes with Honda Sensing, or the Toyota Camry, which comes with the Toyota Safety Suite, it is a very notable and glaring omission, which means it becomes a little bit harder to recommend this car to individuals that might be carting around their families. Now, if you are like me and you're just looking for a large car to denote status or success, for example, and you don't have kids or a family to cart around, then perhaps those omissions will not mind you so much. Besides, blind spot monitoring is pretty much all I ever really rely on a day-to-day basis, mostly because of annoying motorcycles. But if you are a family man and you do drive your family in this car from time to time, you would want things like AEB, especially AEB, looking out for you on those days where you're feeling particularly taxed or particularly tired. It always pays to have an extra pair of eyes looking out for you, and the fact that this car does not offer that is a bit of a shame, especially when you consider that its competitors do. Now, does that mean I wouldn't recommend the Passat R-Line? That's a bit of a difficult question to answer, because you see, on one hand, if you're looking for a powerful business cruiser that is more affordable than a 5 Series, for example, or Mercedes-Benz E-Class, and you want something that's spacious, something that's sharp to look at and sharp to drive, then this is pretty much peerless. Because yes, the Camry is very good to drive, but in terms of dynamics, the Passat will run rings around it. And of course, running rings around the Passat would be the Mazda 6, which also comes with a little bit more in the way of safety features, plus a beautifully happy revving 2.5-litre engine if you buy the top spec model. But there is a certain je ne sais quoi about this car, a certain ineffable quality that I can't quite put my finger on, because there is something very satisfying about being behind the wheel of a Passat. Perhaps it's the way it steers, perhaps it's the way the brake lights, or the rear tail lights rather, greet me whenever I unlock the car. Maybe it's the intricacy of the daytime running lights, or maybe it's the relative opulence of this interior. I'm not sure what exactly it is, but there is something very satisfying and gratifying about being behind the wheel of the Passat. Although I suspect it might just be the 350 Newton meters of torque. But I completely understand people who are besotted by this, who will put logical considerations aside and say the Passat is the D-segment saloon that I want. And why wouldn't you with acceleration like that? In any case, that's been our review of the updated 2022 Volkswagen Passat R-Line. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe. Jangan bodoh.